I do want to thank you all for joining us today. The EMPOWERACTIVE 2015 show, Transforming Healthcare and Energy into the Future, is finally here. There's a few people I do need to thank, as this is a philanthropic event. The proceeds and profits from this are going to send medical supplies to the Republic of Guinea. We have some people here who are going to help us accept an award on that. But the important part of philanthropy is all of you. So to the vendors who have come and bought a booth and supported the show, I want to thank you. I would ask everybody to go and engage in conversations with them. These are market-making individuals. These are companies that are helping transform the landscape of energy and healthcare, and there's a lot to be learned there. To my team for helping put this together, and especially Sarah Certini, Sarah Perrone, Justine Kokomo, and Patsy Vornhagen, thank you very much. This would not have happened without your efforts. What I love about a team is that it transcends the abilities of the individual, and these four people work together tirelessly, enrolling others and making the event happen. So thank you very much. We owe you all a debt of gratitude. Very importantly, to our platinum and I guess trade show sponsor, New Jersey Clean Energy Ventures. This is a client of ours. They have helped us in multiple domains of our business. They give us opportunities to innovate and create and challenge ourselves as engineers and providing them with solutions. But on this side of our business, they have never once said no to supporting the philanthropic efforts that we engage in. They're part of our Special Olympics triathlon. You've been involved in other events that we've had, and we can't thank you enough. So I'm going to bring Chris up in a few minutes to accept an acknowledgement on that behalf as well. To our guest speakers from the healthcare industry who are here today, many of you have traveled quite a distance. I very much want to thank you for being a part of this and relaying to everyone else what is going on in the industry, what you are seeing, how healthcare is transforming radically, and what that means in the bricks and mortars of the world that we all live in. There's a great opportunity, I think, to share collectively our experiences, what we see on the energy side, what you see on the facilities and healthcare side, and how can we help each other to move towards excellence in our industries. There's a few housekeeping issues I'd just like to ask you humor me for a minute. We do continue to have a GoFundMe website link, or I should say a GoFundMe link on our website if you are so moved to continue to donate. We had very ambitious goals for this, as it is, again, a philanthropic effort. If you want to go and engage in that or share that with your colleagues, we are not going to be shy in asking. Again, all these proceeds do go to philanthropic causes, and we would love to continue those efforts. There are some small program changes as are typical with events like this. There's an insert in your program, just so you can see that and make sure you're in the right place at the right time. At the conclusion of this keynote address that's upcoming by Deepak Chopra, there will be a book signing for those of you who wish to get a copy of the book and have it signed. I personally think it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I can't thank you enough, sir, also for being a part of this, so namaste. This event was born out of a conversation within Interactive for who we wanted to be in the world. The philanthropic efforts that we have engaged in with EMPOWERACTIVE were meant to punctuate our efforts in a way that transcended business. Companies work to fortify a balance sheet and have black numbers at the bottom of their income statement and to make profit. But I've always said one thing, is that profit was never the point, profit was the fuel. And if we're successful in our business, we can engage in some wonderful events, and that's what this is about. Ever since we had started the company, I've been very committed to building a company of leaders. It was somewhat selfish in that if I have a company of leaders around me, I could do less work. It hasn't quite worked out that way yet, but it's not to say it's not because of the leaders, it's because we're playing a big game. But what I mean in leadership, I mean in that leadership is not a position. It is not a title. It's not authoritarian. Leadership, as I'm referring to it, is something more than that. It's a way of being. It's an empowerment. It's a way of acting in front of others, causing change, creating opportunities, pulling people up, helping them have opportunities. And it's the kind of leadership that I see in our industries, be it energy or healthcare right now. There's no two industries that I've seen that are more transformative than our two industries. You look at healthcare and healthcare policy. I feel sorry for you all. I mean, you make our industry look like, playground. What you're going through is amazing, and the kind of leadership that's needed in that time of turmoil and change and transition is different than the leadership of the past. Leadership of the past is about reacting to a mode and saving your business, all right? The leadership that we see today in energy is a little bit of the same. You have policy changes, we have technology changes, we have things that are happening that are affecting our business. And in the same vein of healthcare, we want to have leadership that's actually causing change, making markets, helping others. That's what this show is about. I mean, even in Atlantic City, our host venue, the mayor can attest more than anyone, there's radical change and transformation in Atlantic City. And it's leadership like he's bringing to this city that's going to help it see it through this time of I guess, some strenuous goings on. How's that? It's why we wanted to have the show set the way it is, because it's a commitment to something bigger than just sharing information with each other. I would invite you all to spend these 3 days in June in Atlantic City, just engage in thought and conversation about who you are in your organization, who your company is in the world, what you want it to be. All right? Yeah, we have a lot of empty chairs, but 1 or 2 people can make radical change occur in the world. And I hope that all of you would take something out of this in a dialogue with each other, and particularly the imparted wisdom of our keynote speaker, to actually make something big happen. So I think that's it for me. I want to bring up Chris Savastano of New Jersey Clean Energy Ventures. Again, I mentioned that these people are a wonderful client, in a lot of ways mentors. They give us great opportunities, but in this event in particular, their sponsorship as the platinum title sponsor of the event really means that we have the financial success that we needed to have for this to be able to send these medical supplies overseas. So Chris, if you can come up and just accept something on our behalf. And could everybody give Chris a round of applause?
Clearly, Dan's a lot taller than I am. Yeah. On behalf of New Jersey Resources and the entire team at Clean Energy Ventures, we appreciate the opportunity that Dan and his team has provided to be able to allow us to participate in such a fantastic event. But the applause really shouldn't go to us. As Dan talked about the mission of his company and how he's built his team and what they're all about, I think that's inspiration for all of us, really, and we appreciate the opportunity, Dan, to participate in this event. And the applause should go to Dan and the entire team at Interactive for putting on such a great event. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that. Applause from me. Next, please join me in welcoming Mayor Don Guardian. What a great name for a mayor, Guardian. I love that. So Mayor Don Guardian of Atlantic City, he's here to say a few words about our partners in this as well. Mayor?
Thank you. Good morning, Empower Active. Thank you for choosing Atlantic City for your conference in 2015. On behalf of everyone that works here, whether we're driving a jitney or we're behind the house, this is how we get paid, and this is how these poor people have to pay the taxes that I forced them to pay living here. So we thank you. You chose a great property. $50 million have been spent at Tropicana just in the last couple of months. If you haven't been here at night, you got to get outside to see an incredible light and sound show on the boardwalk. If you're a steak guy, my favorite steakhouse is right here at the Palm. If you're looking for a little bit of Cuba, Cuba Libras, great place to eat. If you're just looking for some fellowship, you got to do Carmine's. But you can stroll throughout this property, have a great time. And if you're looking for a little bit of Ibiza, you just got to cross over the boardwalk, go onto the beach. We have probably the best beach bar right across the way on California Avenue. So the first part is thank you very much for coming here. Second part is thank you very much for using the proceeds of this event to purchase medical supplies for a hospital in Guinea. It touches my heart. I've been a Rotarian, a member of the Rotary Club for 35 years. Besides raising a lot of money for world projects, I personally have been to Guatemala on a clean water project. We went home to home bringing filters to parents so they would enjoy clean home. And I've been to northern Nigeria doing polio immunizations in remote villages there. So I certainly realize the value and the importance that those of us that live in the United States need to be sharing with developing countries around the world, and how pennies here change lives around the world. So I thank you for that effort. And thirdly, I want to tell you that I have to speak for the parent company as well. Certainly, it's only a matter of time where we're going to run out of energy, as we all have somehow decided that we don't want nuclear plants. And I'm not telling you I do or I don't, but as they age out, where are we going to get our energy? We're not using less energy. I'm just like you. I have an incredibly low-cost refrigerator freezer that is twice the size of my old one, which is now in my garage for my beer. And that is what we're all doing. So as we've become energy efficient, I now, as an energy efficient American, is using twice the energy that I used 20 years ago when I was inefficient. And we've got to find solutions. I can tell you right here in Atlantic City, we're going to be the first city in New Jersey to completely change over all of our street lightings to LED lighting. We're going to have that done within the next year. If you're down around the Boardwalk Hall, you can see that new lighting there. It's doubling the amount of light. It's reduced crime in the 3 blocks that we lit the last 6 months by 40%. That's just lighting. That's not anything else. So it's very exciting. And at the end of the year, the reason that I love it is it's saving us $810,000 a year in utility costs. We have switched over all of our vehicles here in Atlantic City to compressed natural gas. Saves about $1.51 a gallon. So even if you don't like the idea of energy saving, you gotta like the effect on your pocketbook. $1.51 interprets to a police car that lasts 6 years coming to us for free. That's what happens. So the amount of money you save just in gas gets you to buy that vehicle every 6 years. We're taking a look at all of our buildings. We've just gotten the report on how we can become more energy efficient, and it's real simple things. It's solar panels on our flat roofs, it's changing out the glass, it's adding the e-screens to our windows, and certainly I'm thrilled to have a company that's all about energy efficient here. Finally, thank you for your patience this morning. I do hope you have a good time. I am very lucky, you know, everyone else's forefathers built Constitutional Hall or the Liberty Bell or fought the Revolution. My forefathers developed the city for you to come to have a good time. And if you can't have fun in Atlantic City, you're not capable of having fun, and I'm not doing my job as mayor. So have a great time at the conference. I applaud you for the money you're raising for the medical supplies that'll go to Guinea. But I also want you to have a great time when the conference is over, have enjoyable libations. If you can't find a great single malt scotch in my city or a craft beer, you just haven't looked hard enough. So finally, it's a great pleasure to introduce the president of the community organization that represents Americans formerly from Guinea that are now here, as well as the country of Guinea, in the tri-state area, as well as in Guinea. I'm privileged to introduce to you Abdul Diallo, the president of the community organization. Abdul?
Good morning. Can you see it? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is indeed an honor to represent the Guinean community here in the United States as well as in Guinea. And it's a pleasure to be here this morning. And I thank you for all the hard work you're doing on behalf of the Guinean community and on behalf of the entire humanity, actually, for your donations. Before I proceed, I would like to acknowledge, of course, my colleague, Mr. Abdul Touré, who's the president of the Nabaya Guinea in New Jersey, that accepted to join us this morning. So now I would like to bring Dan Whedon, who's here, Mayor Gordon, back to the stage, and Ms. Chris Savastino, Mr. Savastino. Mayor Gordon back on stage in order to honor and present Mr. Deepak Chopra with this Humanitarian Award in honor of his global impact for the humanity. Mr. Chopra. And this is, of course, on behalf of my community.
Oh, lovely, lovely, beautiful. I'll treasure it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I'm very honored, Abdul, and I thank all the people of Guinea and the First Lady, and of course, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here on this occasion. Dave, Don, Chris, thank you all very much. I'm very honored.
Don't go away. We're going to get a photo.
Oh, yeah. Yes. You know. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'll take those
Take this down.
when I leave, huh? Thank you.
And now finally, I get to introduce, ladies and gentlemen, Deepak Chopra. Deepak is a New York Times best-selling author with over 80 books, translated in over 43 languages, including 22 New York Times bestsellers in both fiction and nonfiction categories. He is the co-founder and chairman of the board of the Chopra Center of Wellbeing in Carlsbad, California, and the founder of the Chopra Foundation. Time magazine has described Deepak Chopra as one of the top 100 heroes and icons of the century, and credits him as the poet prophet of alternative medicine. The World Post and the Huffington Post Global Internet Survey ranked him number 40 influential thinkers in the world and number 1 in medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Deepak Chopra.
Thank you again. Thank you again, Dave.
Thank you.
Don. Dan, Don, David. Thank you very much for being here, and I was asked to speak to you a little bit about my thoughts on leadership, which are summarized in the book, The Soul of Leadership. So I hope you can all hear me, right? I'd like to tell you a story about the genesis of this course that I teach now at both Northwestern University and also at Columbia Business School on what I call the soul of leadership, which is also the book that was spoken about this morning. So it goes back a long time. You know, things incubate in consciousness for a long time. And then when the season is right, the seed sprouts, and soon you have a forest. In every seed, there's the promise of literally thousands of forests. So let me talk to you about a time when I was about 6 or 7 years old. living in a small town, at that time small, but now a sprawling city in the middle of India, with a younger brother who was then 3, who's recently has been appointed the Dean of Education at Harvard Medical School. So we were 2 brothers, and our father was a doctor in the Indian Army, which had been the British Army before that, fighting in the Second World War in the Japanese sector in Burma. But this is post-independence India, and so he was now in the Indian Army. And we read in our newspaper that Mr. Nehru, the first Prime Minister of the new India, after the British colonialism had ended, was coming to our little town. And Mr. Nehru was a great leader of his time. He was the heir to Mahatma Gandhi, so there was a lot of reverence around him. So for 3 weeks before he arrived, there was only one conversation in our house, at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner. And that was, what was the color of the sari that my mother would wear for the occasion? And my father would, of course, tease her and say, Mr. Nehru was not going to be able to notice her sari or the color of it in the crowd that was going to be there for the occasion. And she would smile and say, just you wait and see. So on the day that Mr. Nehru arrived at our street, you know, his motorcade was going to go on the street from our house. We had a little kind of driveway, and then there was a street. We were there at 4 o'clock in the morning. My father in his military uniform with all his medals, my mother in a beautiful pink sari, and I and my brother in our school uniforms, which were shorts and traditional British kind of uniforms with ties and so on. By 7 o'clock, there were millions of people on the street. And when I say millions, in India it means millions. It doesn't mean thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. There were people as far as you could see, a seething mass of humanity. People on treetops, on window ledges, on each other's shoulders. You couldn't have seen that kind of crowd in a soccer match or a cricket match or anything like that. It was rambunctious, noisy, not at all disciplined, and we, of course, were being jostled around and pushed around by this noisy crowd. At precisely 9 o'clock, which was about 5 hours after we had been there, and of course we had, as I said, lost our privileged positions, we were just being pushed around. Mr. Nehru's motorcade turned the corner of our street. He was standing in a Jeep. It was a very simple kind of motorcade for our times. There was a motorcycle in the front, a motorcycle in the back, and he was standing in the Jeep wearing a white, what we now call a Nehru jacket. You know, it has a close collar, and he had a red rose in his lapel, which was his, you might say, his signature symbol. He used to always wear that red rose and the white Nehru jacket. And of course, the crowd went crazy with enthusiasm. Long live Nehru, long live India, etc. Long live Mahatma Gandhi, even though Mahatma Gandhi wasn't alive at that time. And the motorcade slowly, very slowly, came by us, and it passed by us, and then Mr. Nehru seemed to turn. I can remember this in slow motion now. He looked directly into the eyes of my mother. He took his rose out and he threw it at her. He had never done that before, ever, that we knew of. The crowd gasped, they stepped back. My mother stepped forward like a queen, picked up the rose, looked at my father, and she said, "Daddy, what did I tell you?" Okay? And she said, "Now let's go home." And we followed her. In that moment, there was something in my mind which said, she's the leader. My father has the medals, but she's the leader. And we went home, and she emptied a room, which used to be our library. And she emptied it of all furniture except one table right in the middle. And on that table, she put the vase, one vase, and the red rose. And for the next 3 weeks, people came to our house to look at the rose. They would step into the house, and then in India, of course, when you go to a place of veneration, to a holy temple, to a sanctuary, you take your shoes off. So they would take their shoes off. Then they would tiptoe into this room, and they would just look at the rose in wonderment and stillness. After 3 weeks, the rose started to fade, and she had a party. She invited a number of people to the occasion, and at the end of the party, everyone was given one faded rose petal. And you should have seen the way they took it. You would think they were getting a diamond or an emerald or an heirloom. So of course, as children, we asked our mother what was so special about those rose petals. And she said something which I never forgot. She said those rose petals represented the soul of India. Now remember, this is long before anybody spoke of brands or symbols or logos or anything of the sort that we now take for granted. I'm sure you look behind, there's a logo there. There are symbols there, okay? But this is a long time ago. And I asked her then, what did the rose represent? And she said it represented the soul of India. I said, what does that mean? And she said, India had been under British colonialism for almost 200 years. Mahatma Gandhi had been instrumental in bringing freedom and independence. He was no longer alive. Nehru was his heir, spiritual heir, and that rose reminded everyone of their collective dream. That rose was a symbol of a story that had been there for 200 years, a story of transformation, a story of aspirations, of longings, of the fulfillment of dreams. And it was enough to look at the rose to remember the dream. So that became for me, many years later, I mean, I'm only 6 or 7 years later, when I was asked to write a book, actually. I was asked to write a book by certain corporate leaders that we were training at our center and at Northwestern University. I was asked to write a book. The name spontaneously came to me, The Soul of Leadership. And not only did that name come, but a new definition of leadership also came to me. And that was that a great leader, an extraordinary leader, is literally the symbolic soul of a group consciousness. And that group could be a family, in the case of my mother. It could be a business. It could be a community. It could be a political organization. It could be a country, or it could be the world. Because we have leaders at all levels, but the principles are the same. And so even before I start officially going over all the principles, as I have looked at leadership in these different sectors of society, whether it's community or whether it is business or whether it's politics or whether it's nations or global aspirations, I have looked at extraordinary leaders. Not just good leaders, not just great leaders, but absolutely extraordinary leaders, both historically and also in contemporary times. So some names that come to me are, of course, Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, leaders like Oscar Arias of the new Costa Rica, who was instrumental in unilaterally disarming his country from militarism and starting a new ecology mindset. You know, we're talking about energy today, and starting a whole system in the whole country on focusing on clean energy, preservation of nature, ecotourism, demilitarization, a Nobel Prize winner at that. People like Nelson Mandela, people like Martin Luther King Jr., people like John F. Kennedy, people like Abraham Lincoln, and even religious leaders like the current Pope Francis, or religious leaders like Mother Teresa. There are certain themes that emerge from these examples of leaders who literally come from a very, very deep level of consciousness, where in fact they become the consciousness of the group and the vision of the group, that they don't even use the word lead, that they serve. As you have recently heard in the leadership literature, the term servant leadership, that they become servants and catalysts for transformation from what is to what could be. So I think the first thing we have to recognize that extraordinary leaders don't have to be good managers. Managers are people who manage the status quo and do it efficiently, but leaders bring about transformation. So here are some of the things that immediately stand out in the examples that I gave you. That they're actually serving aspiration, dreams, longings. Therefore, they are helping create a new story. And so the first thing we need to know about these leaders is, what is the story that they are helping to create? Not just to tell the story, but to actually actualize the story. They're not only extraordinary storytellers, but they're living a story. And they're living a dream. When Martin Luther King Jr. says, I have a dream, obviously I doesn't mean Martin Luther King Jr. It means a whole psyche, a whole collective consciousness, a whole people that have that dream that he articulates in the extraordinary speech that he gave, which was a turning point in the civil rights movement and the history of the United States. Or the speech that Abraham Lincoln gave during the Gettysburg Address, where he articulated very clearly the collective aspiration that was emerging in the consciousness and the conscience of the new United States. So there is a story, always, and the story has certain elements. A good story also has an arc. A good story says, where did we come from? What's the backstory? Because there's always a backstory. What is the current story? Where are we now? Where do we want to go? and what are the challenges, the trials and tribulations along the way. What is the kind of help we need? What is the type of community we want to create, or the team leadership we want to create in this new journey that we want to take? The journey is not going to be easy. It is going to be challenging, but it is worth taking this journey, because we will get someday to the top of the mountain, and then we will see that, of course, the journey never ends. The top of the mountain is not a peak but a plateau, that we will continue the journey, because our aspirations are a never-ending horizon. And along the way, as I said, there will be challenges. We may fall, but we will get up to articulate and bring about the completion of what we set out on our journey. So in many ways, it is the hero's quest, as so beautifully articulated by the great American mythologist Joseph Campbell, that there's a calling, and there is a calling for a higher ideal, that there is a certain integrity and authenticity to it. There is the alignment of a personal aspiration with a collective aspiration, but a higher calling that transcends, as you said earlier, the personal goals or the mission of an egocentric leader who is just about themselves. And of course, a good story has to have emotional resonance. It's not an intellectual story. We don't usually go to documentaries, even unless they have emotional resonance. People see feature films because feature films are about good stories. And good documentaries are also about good stories. So the story has to have an emotional resonance. These are two very important stories, by the way: clean energy and health care. These are the emerging stories, as you said earlier when you were speaking. And these stories have to have those elements, because right now we're in the midst of a healthcare crisis which is going to bankrupt our country if we don't do anything if we don't do something really fast. And the same is true of clean energy. We are rapidly seeing effects of climate change in the United States and elsewhere in the world. And we have a crisis of such extraordinary magnitude that it could cause possibly our extinction as a human species, where nature might just say the human species was an interesting experiment that did not work. We brought us to that stage. So we have one of the greatest challenges that has happened since the Ice Age, the greatest challenges since a meteor struck our planet and caused the extinction of dinosaurs. I don't think people realize that if there is going to be a mass extinction again, the last one was because a meteorite struck our planet and caused the extinction of dinosaurs. If there is going to be a next mass extinction, it will be because of what we have done to our planet, which is our extended body. Those rivers are your circulation. The earth is recycling as your physical body. This air is your breath. And the trees are your lungs. And we need a spiritual shift in how we look at what we call the environment. It's not the environment, it's our extended body. We have a personal body, we have a more extended universal body, and they're both equally ours. And if we don't take care of it, then we will be taken care of. And that is the big story right now. And that needs to be told over and over again. You can talk about all the technologies you have. You can talk about all the things we can do for health care, but unless there's an emotional story that resonates at the deepest core of our being, people are not going to listen. They might listen because they're going to save a few dollars. They're going to listen because it's more efficient. But if you want a radical transformation in behavior in society, in the world, then the story has to be very, very emotionally and spiritually strong. It has to be better than the best fiction movie you could ever write based on facts. And that is the responsibility, I think, that Clean Energy Ventures has. And that is the responsibility, I think, that EMPOWERACTIVE has. We have to start writing the new story. And that story is so convincing and so true and so factual and hits at the core of our being that there's no choice but to participate in that new vision. I think we have the means. I think we have the resources. I think we have the imagination. I think we have the love in our hearts for not only ourselves, but for future generations and for our planet. Now we need to write a script, an award-winning script that will tell the most extraordinary story that has ever been told. Better than any story in the Bible, better than any story in mythology, because it is the story that people will listen to. So that's the first principle I think I wanted to talk about today in leadership. Extraordinary leaders are extraordinary storytellers, and they're not only storytellers, they live their story. They dream their story. They express it, and they recruit other people to join in that story. People also ask very frequently, does leadership require charisma? Is charisma important in leadership? And of course, this has been a very controversial issue. What does charisma even mean? And I, having studied this quality in leadership, have realized that effective leaders are in fact charismatic. It has nothing to do with how they dress or how they look, but has a certain quality of consciousness that attracts people to become part of their story, that attracts people to want to be involved in that story, that attracts people to make sacrifices for the vision. And so charisma is a very unique quality that people have. And when you look at charismatic leaders, and some of them are not good leaders otherwise, you know, in terms of their moral values. Some of them might be tyrant leaders like Osama bin Laden or whatever, but they do have charisma. And so here are the things that charismatic leaders have. Number one, they are friendly, at least to their to the team that they lead. They're warm, they're friendly, they do not distance themselves from who they lead. Number two, they are present. This is a very important characteristic of charismatic leaders. They're never distracted. You'll never see an extraordinary charismatic leader checking their cell phone or their text message or email when they are engaged with other people. They're totally present. The most important moment in their life is right now. The most important people in their lives are those that they're in front of right now. The most important task in their life is what they're doing right now. And that's why we say they have presence. Presence is a quality of awareness that cannot be distracted by anything in the future or anything in the past, or cannot be overshadowed by what's happening around you. Because presence is a quality of spirit. And the third thing that leads to charismatic leaders is what I would call true self-esteem. True self-esteem is not depending on others for validation. So that means being, in a sense, independent of both the good and bad opinions of others, and yet responsive to feedback. Not being personally offended by criticism, not being personally influenced by flattery. To be both independent of flattery and criticism is to be fearless and to have true self-esteem. And that's it. You know, as I look at these amazingly charismatic people, Bill Clinton is a good example right now. That, you know, he has those characteristics where he's never distracted, where he's extraordinarily friendly, and having gone through all the things he's gone through, he's pretty independent in many ways of both flattery and criticism. So that is a charismatic leader. And there are many others like that throughout the world. So charisma does become an important characteristic of extraordinary leaders because it shows their presence, their commitment, their integrity, and the quality of their awareness. What else? Well, I think the other things that I'm going to share with you, I'd like to bring up this slide here. I just brought one PowerPoint for you. I thought we have about 1 hour, so I have used this acronym in my book. Something easy to remember. I'm a physician by training. I like to write prescriptions, so this is a prescription. Okay, this is a prescription that is easy to remember, and the prescription is the acronym LEADERS. I want to address all of them. So L stands for look and listen. Look and listen at many levels. Look and listen as just a good observer. What's going on? What is the zeitgeist of the moment? The two industries that we are speaking are the zeitgeist of the moment, by the way. Energy and well-being. That is the story of the moment. You couldn't be in a better position right now as compared to any other industry. Because those are the stories, whether you're in China or India or Africa or the United States or Europe, anywhere in the world, those are the two most important stories in our collective consciousness, or what we say the zeitgeist of this moment. That is what it means to be aware, to know what's going on. That's why I say you are in the most extraordinary business right now. If this business doesn't succeed, there's something drastically wrong. Okay, because it is literally eavesdropping on the zeitgeist of this moment in the global consciousness. So look and listen means be a good observer, but listen through your mind as well. Look at all the data. You need the data to talk about the new story. If I was in healthcare, I would say, hey, listen, 90% of the money that is being spent on healthcare is not only on things that could be prevented, but also most of it is spent in the last 6 months of life, where we are supposed to be prolonging life, but we actually prolong suffering. And so here's 90% of what we are looking at being wasted. The amount of waste that goes into unnecessary tests, the amount of waste that goes into unnecessary procedures or surgeries, the fact that only 1% of people benefit from a coronary artery bypass graft if they have stable angina. Why are we not talking about the facts? Why are we not talking about the literal data that we have? So you have to look and listen, as I said, the collective zeitgeist, but also the facts. The fact that every 3 days there are more medical accidents in hospitals than is the equivalent of 2 jumbo jet crashes in the same day. Do you think any other industry would tolerate that? And yet we are not actually looking at those facts. The amount of wastage that is occurring, and that actually you have a story here, right here. You're sending those supplies to Guinea, which would have been wasted over here, which are wasted over here. How can we redistribute those resources? So listen as a good observer, as I say, through the eyes of the flesh, but then through the eyes of the mind, but then also the eyes of the heart. You know, what does this mean for our collective well-being, for our collective suffering, for our collective connection in terms of compassion and empathy? How does this resonate in the depths of our emotions? And finally, I say, look and listen with the eyes of the soul. So the eyes of the flesh, the eyes of the mind, the eyes of the heart, and the eyes of the soul. And what it means to listen with the eyes of the soul is to actually take all that in and go into the stillness of your very being and allow a vision to emerge from this depth of your soul. In this doing so, there is also the creation of your values, and these should embody literally what could be called a soul profile. So when our students come to us at Columbia or Kellogg, Northwestern particularly, there are 500 students that come. And we ask them simple questions like, and we ask them to answer just in 1-2 phrases or 1 or 2 words. Okay, and the first thing we ask them is, what are the most joyful moments of your life? Just write those down, because those joyful moments actually tell you what is truly worthy in life. Whether it was falling in love, or whether it was having a new baby, or whether it was being in a setting in nature, or climbing a mountain, or meditation or prayer. Can you recall 2 or 3 peak transcendent moments? Number 2, can you articulate in 1 or 2 words what your purpose, life purpose is? Do you have a calling? Is your job, is your intended career and your calling in alignment? So again, 2-3 words on that. Number 3, what do you think your unique skills and talents are? You know, because we're not all good at everything, but there are certainly certain things we are very good at. And when we do those things, we lose track of time. It's no longer a chore. We are having a wonderful time. Number 4, do you have any heroes or heroines in history, in mythology, in religion? Who are your role models? Who do you aspire to be like? Number 4, what are the qualities you look for in a great Friendship. What are the qualities you offer in the same friendship or great relationships? And a few other questions like that. A few other questions like that. We actually have them complete sentences like, I would like to be the leader of an organization that. Complete the sentence. I would like to live in a world that. Complete the sentence. I would like to participate in an organization that. Complete the sentence. I would like to have a team that. Complete the sentence. I would like to contribute to my team in. Complete the sentence. I need from my team. Complete the sentence. You see, what we're creating is a value system that inspires us, that makes us feel that what we're doing is worthy of doing. So when our students come and what is the contribution I want to make to my organization, to my business, to society, etc., how will I do it? When we ask our students to do this, remember, these are MBA students who finished graduate school. They've also had a job for a year or so, and now they're aspiring to do bigger things. We take all the answers from the students, and we create a vision board which fills up the walls of a room this size, just with the answers. And then every time they enter the room, they see their vision. And it convinces them that they came to business school not just to make money, but they came to business school because they want to change the world. They came to business school because they have a higher calling. And they came to business school to find other people who are just like them. They realize that they're not alone. So this is what I mean by look and listen at all these levels, but out of that a vision emerges. Out of the collective soul, a vision emerges. And this exercise, by the way, can be done by any organization. Okay? We call it creating the soul profile of an organization. It's not your bio. Bio is what other people think of you, okay? And your references and your job title, but it's something much deeper. The second thing, of course, is that great organizations, leaders know how to not only bond with their followers, but the team itself is emotionally bonded. So think of a sports team, think of a great soccer team. What do we see in teams like that? What do we see in teams that are winning teams? Whether it's the Red Sox or whatever team you want to think about, Celtics, I think in Boston terms, because I spent 23 years of my life in Boston. My children grew up in Boston. But think of a great sports team, and you'll see that, first of all, they're emotionally bonded. Secondly, they complement each other's strengths, because not everybody is good at doing everything. Same thing with basketball. And the third is that they have a shared vision. And so to create that emotional bonding is to actually create the best team that you can. What is the shared vision, which comes from exercise number 1, the look and listen part? How do we complement each other's strengths, and are we bonded? Do we really care for each other? Emotional bonding means listening to each other, caring for each other, what I call the 4 A's: affection, attention, appreciation, acceptance. Okay, affection is really caring at a deep level. Attention is listening without judgment, which is the same thing as acceptance. And appreciation, noticing the strengths of others. Now, as part of some of the work I do with Gallup organization for their health and well-being, we've been looking at engagement in the corporate culture, and there are certain very interesting statistics that emerge. So if your boss or your manager or your leader, if he or she ignores you, your rate of disengagement goes up to like 45%. And sooner or later, it affects your health. If your boss or leader or manager doesn't ignore you, but criticizes you, you actually get better. Your rate of engagement, disengagement goes down to 20% from 45%. Because people would rather be criticized than ignored. If you're criticized, at least you exist now. You're being noticed. But if your boss or leader or manager notices a single strength that you have, your rate of disengagement goes down to less than 1%. And we have now statistics at Gallup that show that in the United States of America, we lose about $300 billion as a result of disengaged and actively disengaged people. So what's the difference between disengaged and actively disengaged people? Actively disengaged people not only come to work unhappy, but they also have the intention of making other people unhappy. Okay? Misery likes company. So emotional bonding is a very important part of engagement, and it comes from, as I mentioned, the 4 A's, but it also comes from your ability to be emotionally free yourself, not to have resentments and anger and grievances and hostility, but instead to have a deeper level of love and compassion and empathy and joy in your own life. And if you don't have joy in your life, you can't have joy in your workplace. So it's silly to kind of make this distinction between your personal life and your professional life, because wherever you go, there you are. And you cannot not help bring your person to your profession. And then, of course, these days, there's a lot of good literature on what is called emotional intelligence, which means, which has 3 components. Number 1, to be in touch with your own emotions and to manage them in an effective way. Number 2, to be in touch with another person's emotions, which is what we call empathy. Without empathy, there is no compassion. Without compassion, there is no love, in the true sense of the word. So that's part of our emotional intelligence. And the finally is the ability to speak in a way that is not threatening. You know, we lose a lot of meaning in relationship through just speech that is violent. So I go back to the great wisdom traditions of the East and Buddha's teachings, where one of the 8-fold means to enlightenment is right speech. And so Buddha says, before you speak, ask yourself, is it necessary? Second, ask yourself, is it kind? Third, ask yourself, is it true? And fourth, ask yourself, will it make a difference in improving the quality of relationship? If you can do that, then you have the speech that leads to enlightenment. So here we are, emotional bonding. The third alphabet here in the acronym LEADERS is awareness. And awareness simply means an expansion of your comprehension of what is going on. and what is needed. So here are the 4 questions I ask if I'm in any situation. What am I observing? Observing is the facts, please. What am I feeling? Because, the facts lead to a certain feeling. And the feeling that arises is as a result of some need that is not being met in a leadership situation. And 4th is, how can I fulfill this need? It's that simple to expand your awareness. What am I observing? What are the facts? What am I feeling? What is the need, and how do I fulfill the need? In a leadership position, what one feels is fear sometimes, feels mistrust sometimes, feels resentment or anger sometimes. But what is the need? And you can go over the hierarchy of needs. People are feeling unsafe, people are feeling a lack of attention, a lack of belonging, a lack of being heard, a lack of self-esteem, a lack of higher consciousness. It's so easy to see that this is any need that's not fulfilled is a result of either survival or safety, or lack of belonging, or lack of love, or lack of self-esteem, or lack of creative expression, or lack of resources. So when you start to reflect on that, then you also know what is the best way to fulfill that need through a collective emotional story. D, dare to dream. Your reach should always extend your ability to get there. What's the phrase? If your reach doesn't go beyond your grasp, then what's the dream for? And so stretch more than you can reach. Make goals that are what I call SMART goals. And that's another acronym. You can see I'm very fond of acronyms. S stands for stretch more than you can reach. M stands for measure everything. A stands for have your team agree on what the vision is. R stands for take responsibility and record your progress along the way. And T, set a time limit. Now that's a goal that we can, if we can accomplish that, those 5 principles, SMART, then we have a plan. Okay, so that is doing. Empowerment follows all the principles of self-esteem, storytelling, all the things I mentioned, but it also involves self-esteem more than anything else. It's not only important to have self-esteem yourself, but it is important to empower your team with self-esteem as well, by noticing their unique skills and talents, by giving them opportunities to express their unique skills and talents, by giving them the opportunity to work with others who can complement their unique skills and talents. R stands for responsibility. The responsibility for leaders means taking risks, calculated risks, taking the initiative, being a role model, asking people, am I doing what I said I was doing? In fact, in our own center, we have monthly meetings where team leaders stand up and ask for feedback from everyone without getting personally offended. But we also ask the team to tell their leaders what's one thing good about them that they have noticed. Okay, so that becomes part of responsibility. But now I think responsibility, where I can see the link between energy and well-being, responsibility for leaders today really means being examples of well-being themselves. Now here, in my experience, are the 5 pillars of personal well-being. And this is after a lot of, you might not know, but they're so obvious, but it took a lot of data to get here. And they're so obvious. So number 1 is good sleep. You know, we now know that 70% of people in the workforce are sleep deprived. And that could be because they're not getting enough sleep, because they're taking drugs or alcohol too much to go to sleep, or tranquilizers. It's part of our culture now. I remember when I was being trained as a resident in medicine, right? Actually, my first year was in New Jersey, Muhlenberg Hospital, New Jersey, as an intern. And one night I got up to go to the restroom, and I heard my nurse waking up a patient. She said, "Mr. Smith, will you please wake up? I have to give you your sleeping pill." So I kind of stopped. I went to her, and I said, "You're waking him up in order to give him a sleeping pill." And she said, "Yeah, because I know he's going to wake up, and then he's going to wake me up, and then I'm going to wake you up." I said, "Well, then give him the sleeping pill." And you know, later I realized that a lot of things we do in our hospitals are for the benefit of the doctors. There are more cesarean sections done on weekdays than on weekends. Why do you think that is? Okay, because the obstetrician wants the weekend off. Okay, there are more coronary bypasses done where there are more cardiologists and cardiac surgeons. On and on, I could tell you, but a recent survey, which I happen to be part of, in New York City hospitals, we discovered that over 80% of the drugs used were for 5 things. Number 1, pain. Number 2, anxiety. Number 3, nausea. Number 4, insomnia. And number 5, constipation. So I came up with an acronym for that too. It's PANIC. PANIC. Pain, anxiety, nausea, insomnia, and constipation. And realized that most of these symptoms were actually caused by drugs. And then there were other drugs given to counteract the side effects of the drugs. Okay, because the sleeping pill causes constipation now, you need a laxative. Okay, because that all causes anxiety, you also need a tranquilizer, etc., etc. And we found that 80% of pharmaceutical use could be reduced if there was something for stress management, or if a patient got a massage in the bed, or did some breathing exercises and passive movement and yoga in the bed itself. Okay, you could reduce that by 80%. Now, this is the future of healthcare if you're looking at the facts, if you're looking at the stories. You know, there's enormous wastage, not in the use of pharmaceuticals, but tests, diagnostic procedures, surgeries. Now that we have the facts, how can we take responsibility for changing the story? Okay, I was saying healthcare then. Number 1 is, I said sleep. Number 2 is some form of stress management, whether it's through meditation or through music or through any other means, massage, visualization, etc. So that would be number 2 in personal well-being. Number 3 would be exercise or movement. Okay. And number 4 would be managing your emotions, and number 5 would be nutrition. These are the 5 pillars of personal well-being. But personal well-being is not the only thing. We need social well-being, we need community well-being, financial well-being, career well-being. So at Gallup, we look at all these 5 buckets of well-being in businesses and in communities. And if in these 5 buckets of well-being you score more than 70%, Career well-being means, are you enjoying your job? Okay, do you have a team to play with? Are you emotionally bonded? The things I mentioned. Financial well-being would be, is money a big problem? Do you get rewarded for the things you do? Are you acknowledged? Are you safe as far as insurance is concerned? Or your taxes are concerned? So we have a method of scoring this, and we can actually, based on this score for a person, for a community, for a business, for a nation, what their well-being is. And if their well-being is more than 70 out of 100, they're thriving. There are only very few, by the way, communities or businesses that are thriving in all 5 buckets. Okay, so the United States is now, at the moment, number 14, with 58% of people thriving, which is not bad. But countries like Panama, Costa Rica, Denmark, Canada, people are much higher scores of thriving. When you score between 40 to 70, you're struggling and something needs to be done in one of those 5 buckets. Financial well-being, career well-being, social well-being, community well-being, and physical well-being. If you score less than 40%, there's a crisis that's coming in the next 6 months. And we can predict for communities things like traffic accidents, hospital admissions, social unrest, and quality of leadership just on this basis. So guess what? We were able to predict what was going to happen in Egypt and Tunisia and all that's happening in those countries right now, where things like ISIS are emerging because the suffering and the well-being is suffering of the people. And when people suffer in communities and businesses, there's going to be unrest, there's going to be violence, and there's going to be disaster. So right now we're looking at Syria, and the outlook is not good. They're going to have the same problems that occurred in Tunisia and Egypt and Libya. In fact, before Libya fell, now I can talk about this, I had the son of Gaddafi in my class with the State Department's sponsorship, because the United States government had seen the data we gave them, and they knew that either we had to somehow rebrand the story of Libya or the country would fall. In 3 weeks after the class in Kellogg, he died. He was killed in the social unrest that took place shortly before his father was killed as well. So I think well-being is this coming story, and well-being is linked to the energy story. And if we start to really now look at the facts and see what the means are and how we can save resources both in the energy field and the well-being field, and the best thing we could do internationally as a country actually is to get rid of our enemies, is to increase their capacity for well-being. Until now, people were not listening. But now they are listening because of the story. The State Department is listening, and multinational corporations are listening, and this is why your future as an energy saving company and creating it to the bigger, larger picture of well-being is actually very bright right now, given the statistics, given the facts, and given the new story that we can actually do something about it. Finally, I put here the word synchronicity as the last part of the acronym. And this came about because as I was looking at leaders, both looking at their profiles and also questioning them, interviewing them, I never found a leader who did not say one of the following. If they were religious, they said, God was on my side. If they were spiritual, they said it was a state of grace. Everything seemed to come together. if they were neither spiritual or religious, they would say, I was lucky. They use the word good luck. And sometimes they use the word, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Or they said there were lots of meaningful coincidences. And what I want to share with you is they're all saying the same thing. What they're saying is that good luck is opportunity meeting preparedness. That's it. To be in the right place, to have God on your side, to have the feeling that you're being supported by a higher power, is actually to be alert to all the opportunities that are present for you in the moment, in this moment of history, in this moment of where the world is going. All the opportunities are there. And when we have opportunity and preparedness coming together, that's good luck. It's not some mystical thing. I have given you the framework for the preparedness. The opportunity is at hand. So, good luck and God bless you.
And this concludes the keynote. I do want to take a moment, though, and thank you, sir. You know, you reminded me of one element of leadership during your conversation, and frankly, I would put you in the realm of leaders that you had discussed, be it Gandhi, be it JFK. These are people that inspired people to action, and what you brought up is the conversation about why we do what we do. And too often, we all get caught up in how we do what we do, or what we do. But we don't tell the story of why we do it, and a great leader brings that to light, and you did that for me today, so I want to thank you very, very much.